We are just getting our webinar started, so I see that folks are coming on. Thank you so much for joining us. This is actually the last in our fall series for the parent and caregiver webinars. And it's been really like a wonderful opportunity to kind of bring the expertise of our faculty and clinicians to the public, and we offer these free of charge. We will have another sort of set of these webinars set up for the spring, so just please stay tuned through our email list. And today I am so happy to present Martha Edwards, and she will be talking about the emotions of parenting today. Dr. Edwards is the founder and director of the Ackerman Institute Center for the Developing Child and Family, and the Institute's Director of Research. Her interests include child development in the context of the family and culture, the collaboration of families and schools, the determinants, processes, and outcomes of parenting, and the integration of body, mind, and spirit in individual, couple, and family therapy. Dr. Edwards created the Bright Beginnings Parent-Child Program, a curriculum that enhances the parent-child relationship and promotes school readiness and mental health in infants and toddlers. She received the 2015 award for the American Family Therapy Academy for innovative contributions to family therapy. She presents nationally and internationally and maintains a private practice in New York City. She has served as board member and vice president for the American Family Therapy Academy. Currently, she is board member and program chair for the New York 0 to 3 network and advisory editor for Family Process. So without further ado, I'm so happy to give the floor over to Martha. And also just a quick note, please hold your questions. If you do have questions, you can put them into the Q&A box you'll see at the bottom of your screen. We'll have time to get to them. So please know that we'll have time for discussion. So without further ado, Dr. Edwards, welcome.
Thank you so much, Helen. I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to be part of this webinar series and to be able to talk about something that I've been engaged in for many, many years. And I'd like to start with a quote by Louise Erdrich, a novelist, who says something very, I think, important for us all to hear. She says, "Life will break you. Nobody can protect you from that. And living alone won't either, for solitude will also break you with its yearning. You have to love. You have to feel. It is the reason you are here on earth. You are here to risk your heart." So with those words of wisdom, we'll get moving along. And I'd first like to do something I've never done before, which is poll our group to get a sense of who are we and who are we coming together as. So with Melissa Tandy's help, I get to launch my first poll. And I'm asking you to just identify yourselves in some of the identities that we all hold. For example, I'll start with myself. The role that I play in my family is I'm a mother. I'm a stepmother, I'm a step-grandmother to a 39-year-old, a 26-year-old, a 12-year-old, and then a 6-year-old grandson. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm straight, I'm white, I'm married to an African-American male. And those are some of the identities that we can share with each other. So if you could just identify yourselves and in these same questions, and just take a moment, fill it in, and we'll just see who we are. So I've launched a poll. Do people have to click on poll to
nope, they should be seeing it. It looks like we're getting
responses. Yes, we are. Okay, great. Great. So I'll just take a few more seconds. We're getting lots of responses. And thank you so much for putting yourselves out there. So the first question, we have roughly 87% are mothers or stepmothers, 10% are fathers or stepfathers, and about 5% are other roles in the family. 86% are using she, her, hers. 11% are using he, him, his for pronouns, and about 3% are using other. Let's see, in terms of our sexual orientation, about 5% of us are identifying as asexual, 5% is bisexual, 2% is gay or lesbian, 85% straight, and 3% other. We have 5% African descent, 11% Asian descent, 35% European descent, 23% Latinx, and 8% mixed, and 17% other. I'm so glad I put other in there because there's so many ways that we can identify, and we don't need to fit into pre-arranged boxes. And what age ranges do our children belong to? We have 25% who have kids who are young, prenatal to 4, 64% have kids 5 to 12, and 44% have kids 13 and over. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your participation. And so let's just take a moment and to think about emotions and our ideas about emotion. For example, do we like some emotions and not others? Do we see the emotions that we don't like as things we should control or things we should avoid? Do we see emotion as messy and irrational? And do we prefer kind of a calm, clear thinking and action? Do we think we're too buttoned up and maybe we should let our emotions have more of a free rein and express whatever we feel whenever we feel it? Do we find emotion a useful resource to fuel our actions and our thoughts? So I spent the last 40 years of my career studying and thinking about emotion. And I have to say that I spent maybe the last 15 of those 40 years actually feeling emotion, because I didn't learn very helpful lessons about emotion and feelings in my family growing up. And so for the longest time, I avoided them or I hid them, not only from others, but also from myself. And I conducted research to understand them. And and all of that was kind of trying to keep emotion at a distance. And a turning point in my life came when I was needing to make a decision many years ago. And I had a conversation with my therapist. And the way I described it was, I can't let emotion get in the way of this decision. I have to keep them apart and not have it cloud my judgment. And he said to me, would it surprise you that every thought has a feeling attached to it? And all of a sudden, like the world shifted for me. The paradigm that I'd lived my life in, trying to keep emotion and thinking and all of that separate, it shifted immeasurably, and I couldn't go back. And so this sense that not only were emotion and cognition integrated with one another, what I actually began to learn is that emotion is essential for wise thinking and action. And so if I had been my own therapist back at that point, and I had been able to apply what I now know, I would have really coached myself to slow down and pay attention to what's happening in my body, and to think about this decision and see what emotions began to emerge as I slowed down and let myself feel my way through this. And I would have made a better decision than I was trying to do in terms of like just looking at the pros and cons of the situation and trying not to feel. So we can't overestimate how difficult it is to feel what we're feeling. And it sounds so trite. You know, how many of us have heard that phrase? You have to just feel what you're feeling. And I think, you know, in my earlier days, I would have rolled my eyes and said, oh, yeah, right, you know, give me a break. But it is actually so essential to good living. And it's really important to help our children learn how to understand and use and feel their emotions as well. We know from the research that if we can do that, our children do better. And let me just share a slide that gives you a sense of that. Here we go. So a whole bunch of studies have shown that when parents can effectively use strategies to help their children with emotion, help them learn what they're feeling, and use it to guide, you know, what they should do, the long-term outcomes are that children are less anxious, they have better social skills, they have less acting out behavior, and they have greater academic success. So it's a very important part of parenting is to help children learn about their emotions. And so I want to just kind of get into it and start exploring what do we mean by that, and how do we define emotion and how do we understand it. And I want to play you a clip. I have two clips I'm going to play. I've gone back and forth. One is a couple and one is a parent and child. So I think I want to start with the couple, even though we're talking about parenting, but it is so vividly expresses some of what I want to help us understand today. So I want to go to a clip from the movie The Breakup, and it's the fight scene. And so what I'd like you to do is maybe take a piece of paper, and as you're watching, look at what are you seeing. Gary and Brooke, that's the two folks in this couple. What are you seeing there? What are the emotions that you see? And then, and maybe in a separate column, what do you imagine or sense is underneath the emotions that you see? So let's look at Gary and Brooke.
Martha, we don't have audio on the video.
Okay, let me stop. Thank you so much. I think I have to click share sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so we share screen, share sound. Thank you so much. All right.
Well, I'm gonna go do the dishes.
Cool.
It'd be nice if you helped me.
No problem. We'll get them a little bit later. I'm just gonna hit the streets here for a little bit.
Gary, come on. I don't want to do them later. Let's just do them now. Take 15 minutes.
Oh, honey, I am so exhausted. I just honestly want to relax for a little bit. If I could just sit here, let my food digest, and just try to enjoy be quiet for a little bit. Get some, get some, get some. That's what happens. And we will, we can clean the dishes tomorrow.
Gary, you know, I don't like waking up to a dirty kitchen.
Who cares?
I care, all right? I care. I busted my ass all day cleaning this house and then cooking that meal, and I worked today. It would be nice if you said thank you and helped me with the dishes.
Fine. I'll help you do the damn dishes.
Oh, come on. You know what? No, that's not what I want.
You just said that you want me to help you do the dishes.
I want you to want to do the dishes.
Why would I want to do dishes? Why?
See, that's my whole point.
Let me see if I'm following this, okay? Are you telling me that you're upset because I don't have a strong desire to clean dishes?
No, I'm upset because you don't have a strong desire to offer to do the dishes.
I just did.
After I asked you.
Jesus, Brooke, you're acting crazy again.
Don't you call me crazy. I am not crazy.
I didn't call you crazy.
Just
I didn't
did.
call you crazy. No, I didn't. I said you're acting crazy.
You know what, Gary? I asked you to do one thing today, one very simple thing, to bring me 12 lemons, and you brought me 3.
God damn it. If I knew that it was going to be this much trouble, I would have brought home 24 lemons. Even 100 lemons. You know what I wish? I wish everyone that was at that goddamn table had their own little private bag of lemons.
Gary, it's
Honest to
not
God.
about the lemons.
Well, that's all you're talking about.
I'm just saying it'd be nice if you did things that I asked. It would be even nicer if you did things without me having to ask you.
Well, I do seem to remember doing something for you this morning without you asking.
Gary, come on.
I'm
You
serious.
know what? No, I'm
here.
serious.
I am
I
too.
really am. Come on, you knew I was working today and I made that meal, and you could have thought to yourself, you know, you could have said, I think I'm going to get Brooke some flowers.
You said on our very first date that you don't like flowers, that they're a waste of money.
Every girl likes flowers, Gary.
You say that you don't like flowers. I'm supposed to take that to mean that you do like flowers?
No, this is not about, you're not getting it. You're not getting this, Gary. Okay, it's not about the lemons, it's not about the flowers, it's not about the dishes. It's just, how many times do I have to drop hints about the ballet?
You know I can't Brooke, come here. We talked about the damn ballet. I hate the goddamn ballet. You got a bunch of dudes in tights flopping around for 3 hours. It's like a medieval techno show. It's a nightmare. I sit there in a sweat. The whole thing. I do. Wondering when the hell's the goddamn nightmare gonna end? Go to a damn ballet.
It's not about you loving the ballet, Gary. It's about the person that you love loves the ballet, and you wanting to spend time with that person.
Not when they're at the ballet?
Okay, forget the ballet. Forget the ballet. We don't go anywhere together.
We just went to Ann Arbor together.
To Ann Arbor. To the Michigan Notre Dame game. You think screaming drunk kids and leprechauns doing backflips, that's fun. That's fun for me. Come on, man. I did that for you. How do you show up for me?
I'm up on the bus every goddamn day for you.
Come on.
I'm busting my ass to be the best tour guide in the damn city so I can make enough money to support both of us, and hopefully you won't have to work one day.
I want to work.
All I ask, Brooke, is that you show a little bit of appreciation, that I just get 20 minutes to relax when I come home instead of being attacked with questions and nag the whole damn time.
You think that I nag you?
That's all you do! All you do is nag me. The bathroom's a mess. Your belt doesn't match. Hey, Gary, you should probably go work out. Nothing I ever do is ever good enough. I just want to be left the hell alone.
Really? Is that what you want, Gary? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
That's what you want?
Yeah.
Fine, great. Do whatever the hell you want. You leave your socks all over this house, dress like a pig, play your stupid-ass video game. I don't care. I'm done.
What?
I am done. I don't deserve this. I really do not deserve this. I deserve somebody who gives a shit. I'm not spending one more second of this life with some inconsiderate prick. You're a prick.
Okay. So let's start with what you saw. And what would be the sorry, wait a minute. Okay. All right. So what would be, and maybe you could put them in the chat, what did you see Gary and Brooke conveying to each other on the surface? Anger, frustration, miscommunication, hurt feelings, unappreciation, disappointment, resentment, expectations, frustration, assumptions, feeling misunderstood, unappreciated, no mutual understanding. Wow, absolutely. Thoughtfulness or thoughtlessness. I missed it. Resentment, needing the other person for their own happiness. Okay. Okay. Lack of confirmation and appreciation, loneliness. Yeah. So I think what you're all conveying is a huge mix of lots of different emotions and experiences. And, you know, I think if I had looked at this clip some years ago, I would have said, oh my gosh, these people are just too emotional. Like, but a lot of what they're expressing is what I call either defensive or secondary emotion, right? It's the anger on the surface, but it kind of masks the hurt and confusion underneath. And many of the responses conveyed both of those levels of emotion. And so what we need to do is to, get past the smoke. Usually anger is often a kind of secondary emotion. And what we need to do is be able to drop down into what does it really feel at the core of what we're trying to, not only what we're trying to perhaps convey to the other person, but what we need to understand for ourselves. And certainly, Brooke was feeling hurt, maybe neglected, unappreciated, unseen, but Gary was too. A sense of being criticized and hurt because of that, and helpless. You saw the look of like, wait a minute, I'm confused. I don't know what you really want. This is really hard. But so much of it was masked by the anger and the yelling and the back and forth. And so we often don't get to that. And let me just share my screen here. And what we're really looking at is what Diana Fosha in her book, The Transforming Power of Affect, called the triangle of experience, which what we want to do is drop down. Usually it means dropping into our bodies to feel what we're actually feeling. Because so much of what we may experience, it keeps us away from what we're actually feeling. And why do we want to do that? And that's at the core of what emotions actually mean. They are signals that arise spontaneously. They're not under our conscious control. And they often change our physiological state. So we feel them as sensations in the body. And they serve as communications to ourselves and to others about what we want, what we need, what we like, what we don't like, what we want to move toward, what we want to get away from. And they guide us. They're a source of wisdom. And I tell you, if you had told me again, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that there's wisdom in our emotion, I would have been flabbergasted. And if we can drop in and really allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling, they're an inner guidance for us and what our hearts desire. And these core emotions, we've learned from a lot of the research in neurobiology, are actually adaptive. They're essential and adaptive to the situations that we find ourselves in. Each one of them has a particular adaptive function that helps us meet the challenges of life. So let's look at what are these core emotions and what do they help us do? And so first, fear mobilizes us to protect ourselves. We flee, we freeze, and if we have to, we fight to protect ourselves, both emotionally as well as physically. Anger helps us fight for something. We say no, we set limits, we set boundaries for how people can treat us. We fight injustice. And sometimes we need some anger to be able to make that fight for something that's worth fighting for. Sadness, we feel loss. Sadness brings others to us and allows us to be comforted by them and a sense of being connected to them. And through sadness, we also have an appreciation for what's important to us, what we value. Happiness allows us to enjoy and to delight, and that happiness is multiplied when we can experience it with others. Disgust is another of these core emotions, and that helps us, again, in a different way, protect ourselves from something that's toxic. It can be physically toxic, or it can be emotionally toxic, and we reject it. Sometimes we actually throw it up, we push it away. And surprise and excitement is the last core emotion that I want to talk about. And that helps us see the world and be engaged in the world with a sense of zest and excitement and interest, but that interest that has an emotional component to it. And it allows us to be curious and wanting to move toward and explore new possibilities and grow in our lives. So a lot of these emotions, let me just move to this. This is some of what we said. This is an emotions wheel that trying to think who, I wrote it somewhere in my notes, who I got this from. I'll come back to it. And I love this because it starts with these core emotions. The author of this particular one included the word bad, so that could be an amalgam of some of these others. But then we begin to see the nuances in all of these emotions. And we're not very good at identifying what we feel. And some of the research has shown that we're usually able to name maybe 3 or 4 of our basic emotions, and then we kind of hit a wall. We're often able to, with kids, we say mad, bad, glad, and scared. And that can be about the repertoire that we have. And this kind of helps us be able to see that there's so many other emotions that that we can feel, and that it would be might be helpful to identify, to understand where we are and what we're trying to tell ourselves through these emotional signals. So I want to kind of give you a little taste of an emotional kind of journey that I went through with a client of mine, because it illustrates, if we can drop into those core emotions, how do they work, and how does it ultimately help us and guide us? So, and I promise we'll get to thinking about children in our helping our children at some point, but I want to just kind of give you this description of this experience. So Karen and I had worked together, and her husband had an affair a few years ago. And they worked really hard to understand it and to deal with it. And they were they had transcended, in a sense, the difficulties that all of that made for their relationship. And they came out the other side more committed and in a actually very good place. But one day he was cleaning out his backpack and pulled out some sort of, like, I think it was a set of headphones that had the logo of the place that the woman he'd had the affair with. So Karen was so upset, like it didn't even seem as if he noticed. And how could he be so insensitive? And it brought back so much of the pain and the hurt that and the sense of betrayal that she had felt. But as we talked about it, her focus was him. How could he do this? He's that, right? And that's what we do sometimes. We focus on the other person rather than coming home to ourselves. And so as I said, okay, but let's come to you. What's happening for you right now? Tune into your body, take a few breaths. And what she began to experience and describe is that there was a wave of pain, and it lasted 20, 30 seconds, because that's what these emotions, they don't hang around if we allow them to have their arc of experience, and they come and then they go. And we stayed with it because that was the doorway. That was the first experience for her. And as we stayed there, the second wave was sadness. How did we have to go through this? This was so painful. And it was so hard. And there was just a sadness of, in a sense, loss of a kind of, the relationship they thought they had. And so she experienced that. And then we stayed with it. And then there was this jolt of kind of anger. Oh, how could he have done that? But that was very, very brief. And then going through that doorway, through pain, through sadness, through anger, she very spontaneously started feeling appreciation. Wow, we've come so far. We've worked so hard. We're in such a better place than we ever were, even before the affair. Wow, it feels so right and so good. So for her, there were these 4 waves. It doesn't always happen that way. There were only maybe one, but she got to a place that she never would have predicted. And when she went home, and what she told me later is, like, she saw those headphones, it was like not a whit of, not a bit of emotional charge. Yeah, didn't matter anymore. Now, I could have said to her, you guys have come so far, you worked so hard, you're not in the same place, blah, 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 right? And she wouldn't have gotten there herself. I would have been trying to impose my idea. What was so important about that is that she dropped into her own body and experience and allowed each one of these emotions to be felt until they guided her to this sense of appreciation. Now, someone else may have stopped with anger, and that would have been perfectly okay, because that might have told us, what, there's something here that needs some work. We need to maybe go back and look at something else. But that's not what she experienced. She experienced this appreciation. And so that's an example, right, of how this allowing and dropping into core emotion can help us process, understand ourselves, and guide us. Because she went home and she didn't say to her husband, how did you do that? She let it go, and she was able to let it go. So what makes that hard? And let me go back to my slides and talk a little bit about why that is hard. So this is what we hope for, dropping into core emotion. But what, and just what I also want to say is, if we allow and fully feel the core emotion, it brings us to what she experienced, what we call core state, where you're clear, you're calm, you may be curious, you're connected to yourself, you feel compassionate for yourself and others. You may have a sense of courage and confidence, but that's where her sense of appreciation isn't a kind of an illustration of core state. And so what gets in the way? Something blocks, right? Right here, something blocks coming down into core emotion. And sometimes it's what we call inhibitory feelings. And for example, I was working with a client who came in and she was upset with her boss, but she started feeling very anxious. And when I said, okay, pay attention to what's happening in your body, what she began to be aware of was in her arms and fists was this tension. And what we realized is she was feeling very anxious about feeling angry at her boss, because she had learned in her family of origin when she was young that you shouldn't be angry at the male authority figure in your life. She was not allowed to be angry at her father, who used to tease her quite a bit. And when she'd get angry at him, he'd say, you know, you're getting too big for your britches, you know, don't you stop that, you know. And so she learned, like, not only to be afraid of her anger, especially toward men, she would feel anxiety as she got closer to that. And so we stop ourselves sometimes from feeling our core emotion. And for good reason. For her, there was a good reason that she learned to be afraid of anger, but she needed to realize she's not a child anymore, and that anger can be useful, and not to be afraid of it. And that's something that we worked on. Another kind of way that we avoid or block our core emotions are through defenses, which are actions or ways of thinking that, again, block, keep us avoiding. And there's like, I have a list of like 40 or 50 that, and we could probably name many here, but some of the big ones are, sometimes we make jokes, we use sarcasm, we overdo, we over-exercise, we overeat, we overwork, we over anything that can be used to keep us going, and not be dropping down into what we're actually feeling. We use screen time. Oh my gosh. And I tell you, I'm really kind of worried about children and how often they, I think, are trying to manage their feelings by using screen time, and kind of just rotely kind of going into that. We can intellectualize rather than feel. Sometimes we can be aggressive, and that's another way of avoiding our emotions. These are all, I tell you, you know, over the years, I've realized that for me, two of my major defenses are doing things quickly, walking quickly, talking quickly, doing things quickly, and being very busy. It's hard to feel when you're busy and you're constantly filling up things. And so I've had to, you know, kind of confront my own defenses. And the problem with them is that they deaden us, because they use up energy, really vital energy for living that can be used, you know, for feeling in our relationships and our work and whatever interests us. And they keep our true, authentic selves hidden and kind of tamped down. And staying hidden really doesn't feel good. We're meant to be seen. That's what, you know, for a child, to be seen is to be nurtured and to blossom. And so when we hide ourselves, it's hard to feel really good about ourselves, and it's hard to feel like we're okay because we feel like we have to hide. And sometimes defenses can kind of lead to us acting out in ways that aren't helpful. We can engage in thrill seeking or dangerous things, and we really can put ourselves at risk. Now, we don't want to give up defenses completely because sometimes they're helpful. If we're in a meeting, for example, at work, and someone says something really outrageous or inappropriate or mean, even if we set a limit, we're not going to allow perhaps the hurt that we might feel to be shown. So we make a joke, we distract ourselves, and so we don't want to just completely do away with defenses, but we want to use them when they're useful, and we want to put them aside to when they're not so useful. So why is it hard to drop into core emotion? Most of us didn't learn how to really value and allow our emotions when we were kids. Not too many of us had parents who were good at this themselves. And when kids begin to realize, like this client of mine, my dad is really uncomfortable when I get angry. And so they start to sense both explicitly and implicitly what parents feel comfortable with, what they are able to handle, and they start to shut down parts of themselves so that they can not overwhelm their parents, so that they can be held in positive regard by their parents, and kind of fit into the family. So we learn this in childhood, and we can think of, what did our parents teach us about our feelings? My dad's stock phrase was, "No news is good news," and I learned, emotions were too much, too overwhelming, and so he kind of said, please don't like tell me. It's like I can't handle this. So I learned, okay, I won't bother you with what I'm experiencing. And we do that. We also, even if we had really wonderful home life and our parents were helpful and helped us know what we're feeling and kind of manage it and not be overwhelmed by it. When we go out in the world, the world may not be so caring and empathic and supportive of our emotions. So we might, as kids, we can experience rejection or bullying or criticism on the basis of, what we're wearing, how much money our family has, what racial identities we are, what we sound like, our language, our accents. Kids may feel like, well, I can't show too much of what I'm feeling here. And so lots of reasons why it's hard to allow and be open to feeling what we're actually feeling. So let's come back to parenting and thinking about not only what our children need, but what happens to us when we're in these parenting moments. And I'm thinking of a parent, and this case, it's a mom and her 4-year-old daughter. And every meal is a battle. This child will one day, scream for mac and cheese and get it. And then 2 days later, the mom makes, or the dad actually both make mac and cheese. And this little girl says, I hate this, and demands something else. And other days, she doesn't even know what she wants. And she just doesn't want what you've prepared. And so for these parents, it's like they're on pins and needles, every meal. Is she going to like it? Is she not going to like it? Am I going to have to leave my food getting cold and make her something else? And sometimes they get angry and they, like, why do you do this? And I'm not a short order cook. And, you shouldn't do that. You should be grateful for what you have and the food that we serve. But that anger doesn't really change the situation. It doesn't make the little girl have a different point of view and doesn't make her trying to ready and willing to eat. And so what I would say, the anger is more of a defense, right? And what might really be going on underneath is a sense of helplessness. And we don't like to feel helpless as parents. But, you can't force your child to eat. And so you try to, the anger might be a way of doing something, to trying to convince her to eat, because cajoling and all the other things haven't helped. But wow, if we could stay with the helplessness and drop into what that feels like, and it's kind of a form of fear, actually, of the child's reactions. What these parents may be able to do is acknowledge that, yes, I am completely helpless to force or make my child eat. And if we can come to grips with that, I think what the shift would be, but I'm not helpless to be and choose how I respond to that and what I will and will not do. And a lot of times we don't want to go there. For this family and for parents whose kids have eating kind of difficulties, we have to come to the power of I will not make new food. This is what we're eating. And if you don't eat it, that's your choice. But I am choosing to take action, to own this for myself and not feel helpless in the face of this, but to make a choice about what I can and cannot do. And to be very clear, this is really an opportunity to set boundaries. This is what is okay. This is what I will do. And this is what I will not do. And that is, that's where the helplessness, you don't have to feel helpless with that. That is owning a parent's authority and power to decide, what you will do rather than trying to control what the child will do. And so feeling the helplessness could be a very important gateway to a parent, one, being clear, what is the child's responsibility and what is the parent's responsibility, and then being able to handle that with more effectiveness. So I know we're getting close to the end. I want to take a few questions, but let me just share the strategies that I think are important to be able to help ourselves and our children to do this work. And let's see. So this is the first thing that I think is important is that when we and our child have an emotional experience, it's an opportunity to learn about our own and our child's emotions and how they work, and to deepen the connection. And this comes from some of what John Gottman talked about 20 years ago when he talked about emotion coaching. And when I first read his work, I just jumped over this. Like, what do you mean it's an opportunity? Well, just tell me what to do. But first, just to realize that, when our kids have strong emotions, not to like hit our head and go, oh my gosh, why are they doing that? But it's an opportunity to do something important. A second piece is to, in the moment, set limits if you need to, and help your child see what's okay and what's not okay. And then within those limits, there's some real ways that we can help children both learn about and learn from, and use, and I hate the word manage because it sounds like you're trying to constrict it and control it, but to not go into a state of disequilibrium. So naming the emotion, and that emotion wheel is very helpful. Helping our kids talk it through, like what happened that led up to all of this, and what's the narrative, what's the story, and what might have been the triggers to these emotional reactions. They didn't just happen out of the blue. And so being able to try to see, what happened, and to invite problem solving. So often as parents, we say, oh, well, why don't you try this? Or did you, you could do it this way. Why don't you do that? But that often imposes solutions on our children. And so to be able to say, that sounded like a difficult situation. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about what you could do to deal with it? And then brainstorming, what do you think? What do you think? Not, here's what I think you should do. Sometimes we just need to provide some comfort, physical or verbal. Yeah, I can see, I'm so sorry you had to that happened to you today. And, for proverbial arm around the shoulders. Sometimes you can, if a kid, if you make that decision to say, look, this is what we're having for dinner, and that this could be hard for your child, then you might distract and provide a shift in attention by engaging your child in what you're going to see on movie night this week, or what happened in school, and help them get through whatever reaction they might have to the limit you're setting and the situation. Sometimes you just need to get away. You can take a break. You can both go and calm down. And sometimes you can reframe the situation and see it more positively. I remember when my son in college and his girlfriend told him she didn't want to see him on blah, 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 I forget what it was, and I'm like, oh no, oh my, my poor son, that's hard to hear from your girlfriend. And my husband said, well, sounds like you'll have some more time to do what you want to do. And so it was so helpful to hear, a different perspective. So let me stop and take a few questions. Let's see. So my 5-year-old is having trouble recognizing her emotion. She screams at school and starts throwing stuff. My husband and I support her and discipline her. Her teachers try to help her. She just isn't very receptive, and I don't understand why. We teach her counting down and breathing. Those are some nice techniques. She doesn't want to do that. She says, I can't stop crying. She's getting counseling at school as well. I'm at wit's end. What comes to mind is perhaps her temperament, and that when we have children who are constitutionally intense, they react quickly, they react strongly, and it is really, really challenging. And what it sounds like is you're doing a lot of wonderful things to help her. But I'm also thinking that if that's what her physiology is like, it's going to take time for her to be able to use these strategies. And it might be, someone's asking, what does it mean to be constitutionally intense? It means what we call temperament. And, we're built, our neurobiology is such that some of us react quickly and strongly and intensely. And so it's part of our constitution, it's part of our body makeup. And we can't change that. But we might be able, when I work with families, I sometimes say, who has a long fuse and it takes a long time to get angry and to kind of maybe explode, and who has a short fuse. And we normalize that. We say, yeah, some people have a short fuse. They react quickly and they need some strategies. But if she can perhaps understand that it's not that she's bad, it's not that she doesn't have it's not that she's unsuccessful in doing these things. It may be that she needs to understand that her body is it's wonderful, sometimes intensity, but it can also be a challenge. But to help her see that it's a kind of normal. It's not, she's not a kid that's out of control, but she's got this wonderful body, and it acts very, very strongly at times. Yes, we are recording. So if you want to look at it later, you can. So we could have stopped at anger, but where would we want to lead our clients to? Happiness, calmness. Okay. Diana wrote an article, the woman who originated this model, and the title is "Nothing Bad is Ever the Last Thing." And so if we can allow this, there is something in this process that allows us to get to something good. We're not always sure what the good is, but those aspects of core state, curiosity, acceptance, calm, we get to something good. And that I deeply both believe and also have had the experience that if we can stay with it and use it as the doorway into whatever is next, getting to the core state and core emotion is what we want to be able to do. I do have some resources. They're in my PowerPoint. Helen, are we sharing the PowerPoint as well as the? Okay, so yeah. I have three books by two in the vein of Diana's work and the model of emotion, and one by Resmaa Menakem that talks about body-based healing. And he puts in the context of racialized trauma, but we can all use these ideas of relationship and healing through our bodies. Okay. Helen, you want to wrap up and just tell people what to expect?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Martha. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. I'm sorry that we can't get to more questions, but we will be sending everyone following today's webinar the recording. It usually takes us about a week or so to get that online. And we'll also send over the PowerPoint and including the resources that Martha just shared. So please do, if you do have questions for Martha, you can either write those to us at community training, and we're happy to send those to Martha, or if Martha, I don't know if you want to provide your email as well, but we're certainly happy to mediate and bring those questions to you as well. So, but thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending today. Please keep in touch with us. We will have more webinars in the spring, including a webinar that will focus on talking to kids about race and racial identity. We hope to also have some webinars in Spanish. So please keep posted, and thank you, Martha. Thank you so much for today.
You're so welcome. And thank you. Thank you so much.